Good morning and welcome. This is our day 5 of our live stream virtual open house here at the North Bennett Street School. My name is Sarah Turner, and it has been such a pleasure to get to introduce the visits to the programs all week long. We have seen so much. Just on this last day, I want to thank the faculty and the students for sharing so much, not only about the work that they do, but their stories of how they got here. It's just been incredible. And if you haven't seen the things that were happening earlier in the week, all of those recordings will be on our YouTube channel. You can visit those as often as you would like. Today, our Director of Admissions and Enrollment, Rob O'Dwyer, is going to take us through the bookbinding program, and he'll be showing you students at work. He'll talk to faculty. You'll get to see the workspace. I think it'll be a great way to visit our bookbinding program. Always in the background, there are people that can answer questions, so that if you have things you want to ask, you can chat those in, and those will be answered as we walk through. And then at 11 o'clock today, Rob will host an info session. So if you've been storing up questions over the week, you will have Rob's undivided attention, and you can ask him everything you want to know about North Bennett or applying or coming here. So join it at 11. That'll be a really useful time to get to spend with Rob. So with that, I will turn it over to the bookbinding program and to Rob as our guide, and I hope you have a great visit. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, you bet. Have fun.
All right, so we're going into bookbinding right now. You can see the sign says workshops. The space here is shared with full-time programs and our continuing ed courses. So if you are interested, please check out our website and look for some of those short courses. Jeff, how are you?
Good. How you doing? Welcome. Glad to see you all. Yes, this is this first room is a space that we share with continuing ed, and it is our classroom teaching space. You can see down at the end here a demo table and big screen that we're using to show close-ups of some of the work that I'm doing, and my co-teacher Martha Kearsley, who's not able to be here today. Martha's here usually one day a week, and she works on a particular portion of the curriculum based around the repair and conservation topics in particular. It is a 2-year program in that we call a hand bookbinding program, and repair and conservation is kind of a concurrent aspect of the program, because it's a big part of the demand for the skills that students are learning here. But what we are doing is focusing on hands-on work on developing bench skills, bookbinding bench skills that are useful for any application in working with books. I put out some samples here, and I'm going to run through them kind of quickly here, and then we're going to and that's just samples of things that we've been working on, models and demonstration pieces that we've been doing this semester, a few things that we will be getting to shortly in the program. Then we're going to go check out some of the other rooms. We're going to look at some of the shared large equipment, and then we're going to take a look in the bench room and talk to students. And I want to make sure I give plenty of time for that. And if time allows, we'll come back in here and we can take a look at any specific models, or talk more about them, or answer other questions. So I'm going to give a quick run through of some of the stuff that we do. Here in the very beginning, in the first year cohort starts working on some what we call non-adhesive binding structures. Most of those are medieval books. Some of these are what we consider kind of medieval paperbacks, basically. That's what they start with. The program focuses on Western bookbinding traditions and the codex in particular. So this sort of general structure that we're thinking of, it does not work chronologically per se, because aside from these relatively simple medieval bindings, it's sort of easier to work almost backwards chronologically. And so we do a lot of stuff where where we're working on simpler techniques, structures that have been simplified over the years, and work back towards the more complicated things. So I'll try to do a bit of a run through. As soon as we finish with the non-adhesive work, we get into case binding, which is really more of a 19th century and recent kind of development, where the covers are made separately from the book. And you can see an example of it here that is not put together with the case made separately from the binding. And that is what your typical hardback book is like today. We also get into titling. These are some direct foil stamping pieces here. And I think one of the students is actually in the other room doing some foil stamping right now. So you'll get to see how that works. We do a lot of box making. The typical clamshell box is just one type of structure that we use. It's perhaps the most, in terms of basic boxes, it's sort of the most common and most protective kind of enclosure, but we make all kinds of different protective enclosures. That is a very popular item, especially in preservation and conservation work as well. There's just an unfinished tray that goes on one of these to demonstrate where the cuts happen for all of these kind of things. Let's see, I'm going to say we also very recently got into some really simple modern type structures. This is just an adhesive binding, which is actually what most of your bindings today are made this way, as opposed to these that you can see have been sewn, or you may be able to see that they've been sewn. And I know one of the students is working on that in the other room, so you'll get a little sense of that kind of structure. But this is just a simple what we call a double fan adhesive binding with a limp paper cover. And this is another structure that the first year students have been working on recently. We call this a serial binding or a cut flush binding, and it's kind of a common technique in libraries for binding newsletters or other serial publications, but it also makes a really nice notebook kind of thing. Another recent thing that we've been doing with the first years is looking at this variety of sewing techniques. And the real purpose for that is to understand the influence of various factors on the action of the book. And so by trying to hone in on just the variable of the sewing structure and the different ways of using the sewing supports, we can look at the fact that the books open very differently if they're sewn, in this case, on what is this one? This is a herringbone sewing on double raised cords, versus taking that same cord and flattening it out and sewing in a more modern technique, just lap sewing, and how much wider that opens. There's not necessarily one better than the other, but it depends on the quality of the materials and the kind of action you're looking for in the binding. Although I would maybe say that this lap sewing on tapes is a little less structurally satisfying than some of the others that we've done here. So that's a really interesting project that gets the students thinking about the actual action of the binding. We're about to get into, when we come back from break, we're going to get into some more historic bindings again. This is a type of a German style paper binding. These are late 18th century, early 19th century. We're basing these models off of this particular historic example that I think is from 1806. And it's an interesting structure using simple materials. A lot of times people think of these books as being temporary, but this is definitely was not a temporary binding. We know because it's been trimmed, has edge decoration, a lot of other features tell us that this was meant to be the finished structure, not a temporary holding pattern. And they're quite elegant. It's covered with a paste paper, which is a type of decorative paper that binders have traditionally made. There are some samples over here on the table of some papers that these were not made by students. Those are some of my favorites from a couple of paper makers that I know. And also over there, you're seeing some marble papers, which the students will be doing. The brighter colored ones are what they're going to be doing this year when we have guest instructors, Dan and Regina St. John from Chain of River Marbler, marbling. And the ones on the left over there that are a little more muted are a watercolor marbling. They call classic marbling. And those are more common on the historical kind of bindings that we see here. So these books that I'm talking about that are full paper bindings in particular are often covered either with paste paper like you see here. And this is a paper that's actually made by a German decorative paper maker named Suzanne Kraus. But the students make these kinds of papers. I don't. I'm too lazy to make my own. And then, well, there's lots more to come in the first year. We'll get into leather bindings, especially leather based case bindings and boxes and things like that, and introduce that kind of stuff. But here I'm going to start showing you this rest of this lineup is stuff from the second year students. And one of the first projects that we do with the second years, we call, in America, we call millimeter binding. And they are bindings that have very small quantities of leather, which is why we call them that. Sometimes very small quantities. This one may be hard to catch on film, it's so small, but they just have leather caps, head and tail caps here. And otherwise it's a full paper binding. I believe the Germans call it an Edelpappband, which is a fine paper binding. And ours are based a little more on Scandinavian book structures, Swedish and Danish structures. This is a kind of a cutaway model showing a couple of the different styles. This lower part I consider kind of the classic, what we would call classic millimeter binding structure. This top part that has a leather running along the whole head and tail would have on the whole head and tail. We call a Roubaud binding. Let's see. And these are frequently covered with paste paper, as these all are. This paper was made by one of my students. These papers were made by a decorative paper maker named Madeline Durham. Again, all stuff that the students do, but I'm too lazy to do my own, so I use other people's papers. More recently, we've been doing, in the second years, they've been doing a lot of gold tooling practice, what we call finishing, various finishing techniques. This is the in progress demonstration plaquette. We call a sampler plaquette, and it's just to show a few different types of traditional leather decoration. So gold and blind tooling. When it's tooling without gold leaf, we call it blind tooling. Some decorative tools in gold and blind of different styles, and this one has some onlay work going on. It needs to be gilt still, so that one's a bit rough looking, as is this little circle over here. But this is in process. That's what the students are working to finish. The second year students are working to finish right now, and that's just developing some basic tooling skills that they're going to need for some of the upcoming projects that they'll be doing. They also just have been working on a very classic kind of English style leather binding that they had the option of doing either in full leather as a practice piece for some of the work that we're going to be doing, or they could do it in quarter leather. Quarter leather is something like this, or half leather, has just a leather spine and leather corners. This style is a traditionally made book with laced on boards, meaning that the sewing supports are used to lace on the boards themselves. It's put together and then covered in leather after we've gotten that far, which is more traditional than the case bindings that I was showing you earlier, that the cover is made separately. So we consider this kind of thing to be a true binding. And this one has nice kind of English style marble end papers, this sort of exaggerated turn in area and stuff. So, and just simple tooling on it so that they can apply something to a real book as opposed to practice boards like we're doing here. It's a little more daunting. What we're about to get to, they'll be jumping into the second years when they return from break, are leather rebacks. So here is an example from last year's project on that, where what we've done is lift off the original leather, put a new leather spine on, which in this case was stained to match as closely as possible to the original materials there. This one's gotten a little damaged. This was the demo piece. Sometimes I get a little sloppy on the demos, show them what can go wrong. I always tell them that mistakes like that are intentional. I make those sacrifices so that they'll feel better about their own. And then it also has some repair work done in the inner hinge area. And again, this paper was toned in there in the inside hinge to match or camouflage the repair with the rest of the covering material. This one brings up another thing that we will be working on in this style of sort of very common in the 18th century, really from the 17th century into the 19th century. These calf bindings, which are stained and sprinkled in a way that allow them to mask flaws in the leather, but also they can be very elegant types of decoration without doing a lot of tooling. So I have some samples here of stuff that we'll be doing that are, well, this one, other than the additional work that's been done on it, is simple sprinkling, very much like what you see on this one. Although this has some resist and combinations to create a little more flashy pattern in it that is hard to see now, but was at one time probably really, really attractive. Another really classic one is this panel style binding, sometimes known as a Cambridge panel. That's one that they may apply using templates, using stencils, I mean, to do the sprinkling and staining. This one has some Brazil wood added into it, so it gives it this reddish hue. This is a very poor example of the way these stains are used to create kind of tree patterns. It's a very traditional one. I should have pulled out an example of a traditional one. It really does look like a tree. I call this little demo one bush calf instead of tree calf because it's a little small. It's not really a fully developed tree. And this is an example of a full leather version of that style of calf binding that would be kind of a classic 18th century style. one of the kind of common blind tooling patterns that you might see on that. Another feature that's really common on these is both the red, usually red edge decoration and the gilt board edges, which were done even on books that didn't have any other tooling on them. And then they will often, fancier ones anyway, will certainly have marbled end papers. This is a little simpler version that's maybe a little more 19th century use of that sprinkled calf. All of that, by the way, is done after the book is covered in undyed leather. It's stained in a two or more part process to develop the base color and then the sprinkling, which is done with a ferrous sulfate. Let's see. And these, by the way, are sewn on raised cords, laced on boards, although this one was sewn on recessed cords, which is a little more 19th century kind of thing. Let's see. Then the other thing that they've just been given is one of their major assignments for the year in the second year is to bind what we call the set book project. They are all given, and this is what it is this year. They're given an unbound book and the assignment to bind that in a sort of a deluxe full leather binding with some kind of decorative work. These are called fine bindings or sometimes called design bindings. This year they're doing this, The Illustrated Man by Ray Bradbury. And they just got their marching orders on what they need to do. This is one somewhat unfinished one from a demo from the book from a couple of years ago. We did this Randall Davies and his books of nonsense. But they're required to do something decorative. It can either be a very modern kind of artistic conceptual take, or it could be a very traditional kind of tooling design. Like everything that we do in this program, and like these examples that we were looking at here of the calf bindings, we're interested in historical styles of decoration, historical techniques, and what we're mostly interested in is execution, and good execution of those techniques. So on this project, they've been given a lot of instructions to avoid getting into really avant-garde kind of creative work. What I really want to see is how they can do well executed work that is super planned out. So that's a major project that they'll be working on off and on over the next few months, actually. And then another major project, which we'll get to, which people like to know about, is this sort of more Gothic style binding. This is a bit of a modern take on it, but it is a wooden board structure. We're usually looking at something kind of 16th century approximately for this type of structure. It almost always includes some kind of metal clasp, which we will look at how to make at least simple clasps of these styles. And then I'm going to step to the other side. You can stay right there, but I just show a couple last little things before we go in the other room. A number of other things that we work on are making and modifying the tools that we use. And we consider that to be a really important part of becoming a craftsperson, is being able to modify your tools to work in a professional way. So one of the things that the students, all the students worked on earlier this year are making some knives. So this is an in-process basic sort of English style paring knife. This is a lifting knife. They do some other metal working, like making these little triangles for making all those fancy cuts on the box trays that I was showing you. These knives are made from power hacksaw blades. We grind them down and shape them in a on the grinders over here. This machine and a couple others. And they also make their sharpening kit, part of which includes this stand and the plates that we use for sort of sharpening stones, I guess, which we like to use a micron graded grit that sticks to these, and then we can keep replacing it. It's a nice simple way to have flat sharpening stones, and we make this little stand to hold those plates, and we can replace the surface and keep things nice and flat. And it's a good way to introduce them to some general metalworking skills, making this whole structure. Another thing, a little more on the primitive side, is very important to bookbinders are bone folders. When the weather gets nicer again this spring, we will be making bone folders like these out of mostly out of elk bone. So that's upcoming for tool making and modification. Let's go in the other room and take a look at what's happening in the shared equipment space.
Great.
And then talk to the students. So we call this room the print shop. Insofar as we do printing in the bookbinding program here, it's actually mostly foil stamping. And what we're doing is using these heated machines. Nick is doing it right now, and you guys might want to squeeze in there and see how she set that up with brass type.
How are you?
Good.
She set that up, and then we'll stamp either directly or on labeled material usually with a foil. Gold foil in that case.
Heat up a bit before I can stamp the cover. Needs to be around 300 degrees.
Oh, yeah. And that's the gauge right there heating up?
Yep.
Correct. 179, 180. Nice.
All right. This shop, this space is where we keep a number of the larger pieces of equipment, stuff like that. Obviously, students don't each have their own foil stamping machine, but we have several of them in here that they can share, including a larger scale one back here in the corner that is we use more for larger dies and things like that. That's a tensile stamping machine. All of these cases are full of type that we use for that process. And then this is also where we keep book cloth, and back behind you guys are all the flat files full of papers that the students are either making or purchasing for the supply for the projects. A number of the supplies are provided, so these kind of general use supplies like book cloth and book board and paper and things like that are all kind of used throughout the space by everyone. But some things like leather, we provide leather for some specific projects, but then students want lots of different colors and they want different things from each other, and so they buy their own leather for the most part, and decorative paper they either make or purchase based on their own particular needs. So let's go in here to the bench room. That's where students each have their own space. And I think that you guys can see a little bit of variation of what students are doing. So we're going to make Alexa really nervous here and come up right behind her while she's doing some gold tooling. And she's it's really helpful when a group of people come and walk around right behind you when you're doing that.
Perfect.
The gold leaf blows around and things like that. So she is working on that sampler plaquette that I was talking about. She's going to lay some gold leaf on that surface, which has already been sized. And she put a little very light grease on the surface to help grab the gold leaf.
Thanks, Alexa. We're grateful.
Yeah, it's okay. Like this is like one of the hardest things to do as a demonstration. So it's
All right.
very nice of her.
We're live without a net.
So she's got a heated tool there, which we generally overheat and then use that cooling pad there to gauge the sizzle and figure out roughly how hot it is. And then she's going to strike that impression that's already in the leather in this case. And it will activate the size that is on there, the adhesive that's on there, which is a shellac-based size that we make. Strikes that with the heated tool, and then she'll clean that away. Just show them close what it looks like right now. And then you don't have, if you want to clean it away and show the results, you can. This is the nerve-wracking part. Did it work?
Did it work?
And so we kind of clean away that excess gold and take a look and see if the gold stayed in that impression.
Looks good from here.
It looks
Yeah.
good. It looks good. Nice job.
Thanks. There you go.
There are a lot of different ways of doing gold tooling. This is one slower method, but it's very good for fine binding work. And it also is very good for those of us who don't do gold tooling every day, all day long. The quicker methods require you to have a really good sense of the heat of the tool and the amount of pressure that you need. And you're trying to strike the impression and get the gold to stick all in one go. And that requires a lot of experience. This method takes a lot of practice as well, but is a lot more controllable.
Jeff, we had a question come through
Yes.
the chat, which was, do students design their own tools or tooling, I think. And I can recall there was a student here a while ago that created tools that were like the Elven alphabet from Tolkien, but I think that's a side project.
It is, along with some of the other metalworking, clasp making and things like that, I teach some basic tool making. So the finishing tools, I'm going to grab one of Alexa's here. This one would be fairly complex to make as a beginner. And this tool actually comes from a collection that was once owned by the Club Bindery. And we received a couple of years ago now, we received a really generous donation of a couple thousand decorative tools that are part of that collection. But a lot of modern work is done with less traditional tools like this and more simpler shapes, things like that, that can be used to kind of build up patterns and things like that. And especially those kind of tools, I do teach the students how to make those. And what they learn from that can be applied. So yes, it's been a number of years ago now, but yes, one student made some shapes that they were able to use for for that Elvish alphabet, and they titled I can't remember which book they did on it, but it was a labor of love. Some of those things, like the tool making, I show some very fundamental kind of work on that. We're using brass and bronze for that. But the amount of time that students spend on that kind of thing is totally up to them. Those are really optional projects.
It makes me think as you get introduced to so many different things, that if a student has an interest to go deeper, they're welcome to do that. And maybe you or someone within your network, you can connect them with people to go in those directions.
That's exactly right. So there are requirement elements of the curriculum, and then there are a lot of topics that we get into, and that's one of them that some people may never do that in their career. And I would say the vast majority of bookbinders never make their own finishing tools. Like, it's not a common activity for bookbinders, but it's an interest area of mine. And so it's something that they get a chance to do and play around with a little bit. And then it's like you say, Rob, the students have these required projects, but then they're going to spend more time on the things that interest them. So some of the students may spend an excessive, let's say, amount of time doing gold tooling, but some are really more interested in working in the conservation field, and they may and probably should spend a lot more time doing conservation and repair treatments for their portfolio than making design binding kind of things. So let's look at a couple other things that students are working on. I don't know what Kaylee's working on over here, but Kaylee's in the first year. She's doing guarding. So that is repairing the damaged folds on a book that was in pretty poor condition and was completely disbound or finished disbinding, as the case may be. And now those folds are a little bit damaged from the earlier sewing and spine linings, and possibly a little bit damaged from the process of removing all of that. And so she's mending that with some Japanese tissue. And we use a lot of Japanese and Korean papers that are very strong and yet very, very thin. Mostly kozo fiber papers. And we use those mostly with paste to apply repairs to tears and things like that. And I think another student is working on some mending with those tissues.
We had another question, Jeff,
Yes.
come across the chat, and I believe the question was, is it, can you combine other education, continuing education, maybe before or during or after the 18-month accredited career training here? And I know from my conversations with you, we offer continuing education classes. We started at the top there mentioning that the continuing education courses for bookbinding here, which just opened up again, so you can check out our website and see what's available there. That is a common thing for people to do to get some experience, or to decide whether or not they want to make the commitment at this level towards career training. And then there's a number of other places around the country and around the world as well that give you different angles. Can you talk about that a little bit, Jeff?
Yeah, so we would consider the program here to be kind of a foundational set of bench skills for bookbinding and conservation. And it is very focused on the hands-on stuff, as I said. And I would say, depending on people's career path and choices, this is just one component of their training and education. So we've had quite a number of students do additional work at either in a master's conservation program. There are a couple of programs overseas that students have gone to for more additional conservation training, especially the more science side of it, which we do not. We focus on the hands-on. We don't focus on the chemistry, and we don't do a lot of focus on the theoretical, although we definitely talk about the ethics and the hands-on side of almost all the treatments that we know of out there. But some of those programs are going to give people exposure to elements of conservation training that we simply can't do in our time frame here. We're very much focused on this broad range of foundational hand skills for bookbinding. Additionally, I myself am a graduate, and I was very interested in more in fine binding than in conservation. And I went to, there's a school in Colorado called the American Academy of Bookbinding, and they have a focus on fine binding, particularly French style fine binding. And that is a program that I did that I considered kind of a follow-up to what I did here. It's a workshop-based school, so students do pick and choose the topics that they want to do, and they can you can graduate from that program, but you can also take individual workshops. And so those are two examples of the kinds of additional training that people do. But another very common pathway for our graduates is to get what I would consider more on-the-job training. So there are a lot of internship and fellowship opportunities, and our graduates will do those and kind of piece together a number of different learning opportunities to go farther in the conservation field. It's very common and the most common. One other thing I should mention is a very common second degree kind of thing is a library school. And that in combination with North Bennett Street School has been really successful for a lot of our graduates going into conservation. And in fact, here's a student that came here from, Abra came from library school before she did this, and will likely, I hope, be successful combining these education experiences into a good career.
Yeah.
What are you working on, Abra?
Well, I'm currently just building some cases. I haven't cased in these books yet. They are exposed cloth hinge books, but I haven't cased them in. I've just made the cases, and I'm waiting to do some stamping that you guys saw earlier. But Jeff is right that I am, in general, very interested in the conservation side of what we do here. So I thought I'd pull out something that I worked on. And I did a reback of this children's book, which is really delightful. But the part that I'm most proud of is right inside here, where I repaired the hinge with a piece of tissue. And the tissue was blank. But what I ended up doing was very delicately painting the tissue, color matching the end papers here, and painting the tissue before I put it on to match the pattern on the end papers so that I wouldn't have to disrupt this really beautiful end paper here. And that was a challenge. And I did it a couple of times before I got it pretty well right. The inside here, I did the same thing on the front as well, but I was really quite pleased with that. And color matching has been something that I've really enjoyed doing so far. So that's my pride and joy right there.
Nice.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is a good opportunity for our students
Thank you, Abra.
Of course.
is the chance to do stuff like that, that you may not frequently go quite to that length. Certainly not if you're working in a library, but especially it's one of the things that we like about the way we work here is that we consider the needs of a lot of different clients. So institutional collections might not expect that, or they might for certain work. Probably not a cloth case binding. They probably wouldn't expect that. But a private client probably would, and probably would really prefer that kind of treatment and that level of aesthetic addition to the work. And so that's the students have a lot of opportunity, a lot of bench time. And so they are able to kind of explore those kind of things. And one of the things that we like to think is that they have a chance to do those things. If you can do that, you can certainly do a simpler repair. So let's see what else. I think a couple other students are working on repair work right now. Ooh, this looks great. That looks fun.
This is fun. It is an old photo album that belonged to a friend. She took all the photos out and gave it to me because she thought I'd have fun with it. And I am getting ready to take the two parts and put them back together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this remaining cloth hinge that was keeping the two pieces together, and I'm going to glue that back in. And then I'm going to take the paper that fell off of it and glue that back up on top. So it is exciting.
When you opened it, I thought, oh, somebody's hiding something in there, like some keys or something. But it makes sense. It's a photo book.
Yeah, there is one photo that is left in it, which is kind of fun. So no idea who that is, but
Oh, that's great.
I think you should convert it to a book though, to keep all your money in.
you know, I could just not put any
Yeah.
photos in it. And just,
Oh.
yeah, my own secret book.
That's great.
Great.
Thank you for sharing.
And Mimi's working on a repair project too. Are we back?
Yeah, I'm just trying to work on cutting my hinges the right size so that it fits into where I lifted the end papers and the book cloth. So yeah, so then it'll fit under there.
That's great. I love all of these old books. Did you choose this?
I just found it at a thrift store. I just, I'm not trying to spend too much money on fixing these books.
Sure.
So like maybe paid like $5 for it.
Right.
I'm not really like interested what's in it, just something to
Right.
practice
Structurally.
on. Yeah.
Right.
But I mean, I do have books that people are gonna give me to fix later on. So yeah.
Cool.
We have a lot of.
Thanks for sharing.
We have a lot of. We have some limitations and some opportunities when it comes to repair projects. We're not connected to an institutional collection. And so that means we don't have a constant stream of books to repair. But on the other hand, I think if we were connected to such an institution, the types of books and the types of projects that we would be working on would be according to the needs of that collection.
Right.
And there are good things about that, but there are also some really good opportunities for just practicing on books that are in the $1 to $5 range. And I hesitate to say it on camera, but sometimes we find a book that would be perfect for a certain type of repair, and it might accidentally get broken in a certain way. that makes it a good candidate for practicing a specific technique.
I think that's fair.
and,
Collateral damage
yes,
in the name
exactly.
of education.
So we might damage something, but we fix it afterwards, if that's fair. But otherwise, students do kind of, students are responsible for kind of selecting books to work on, to practice on. And then we do a lot of work for clients as well. So Mimi was mentioning that she might, she has some books from friends. Rachel is working on something that she got from a friend. We get a lot of things from friends and family once somebody finds out that they know somebody in bookbinding school.
Right.
People come out of the woodwork with that kind of stuff, and that can be good and can be bad. But we also then have a lot of inquiries that come through. We have a commission, a job and commission site on our website that you can post something for a student or graduate to work on.
Great point.
And I think that there's a thing right on the landing page to post a commission like that. And students, once they've practiced a certain range of things, Martha and I turn them loose on those projects as well and give them guidance and support on how to work on projects like that. So if you're interested in that, students will take on projects of that variety. And if it's not appropriate for a student, we will push it towards a graduate. Okay.
That's great.
Let's go over here and see. There's one more student in. Some of them are not here today because we're going on break now, and some of them had travel plans. But EJ's stuck over here by herself today, and she's working on a new book. And she's working on sewing, that kind of sewing that I was talking about that is common on modern style binding, lap sewing over. Oh no,
I'm doing a
you're
link
doing
stitch right now.
Sorry,
I
you were
was
working on
doing-
lap sewing earlier when I saw you.
Yes.
Okay, doing a link stitch right now, which is a type of unsupported sewing structure. But she was on these others doing lap sewing over rainy band.
Yeah, so that's what that is, and that turns into a rounded back case binding, or those will. And then this one will be the cut flush, which I
Okay.
know that Jeff is
Zero
talking
binding,
about,
yeah.
which will look more like that. And you'll be able to see the sewing that I'm doing right here on the spines.
Great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Very fun.
Thanks. Well, we can step back in here if people have other questions.
Yeah, I
or
think-
wanna have questions about specific models.
Thank you, EJ.
I think we're about out of time. I don't remember what.
I think we've got another 4 or 5 minutes or so. We
Okay.
did have a question that just came across. Do we deal with water damage things? And it's funny, when you were talking earlier, I can remember looking out my office window in the old building and seeing you with like a pile of books and a hose, water damaging
Speaking
things.
of damaging things, I got a lot of flack from one of the neighbors when they walked past our old parking lot and caught me watering a pile of books in preparation for a disaster response workshop. And yeah, they had some choice words for me on destroying books. They were discards from local libraries, and I went through them even after that and made sure there wasn't anything that really was
That's great.
important or anything. A lot of it was more ephemeral kind of material. But we do disaster response work like that. We do not do a lot of repairs on wet or recent damage like that here in class, because we don't have the facilities to deal with mold abatement. And mold is something we don't want to expose people to without the right safety equipment and precautions. And so we don't do a lot of work with that actually in our class or for clients. That is a limitation. And so if you have moldy books or books that have been wet and are sitting around, we may not take on that project within our facility here.
That's
Okay.
fair. Safety
But-
first.
But disaster response, and we sadly or fortunately, whichever way you want to look at it, 1 year back in the old building, there was a small fire upstairs and the sprinklers went off, put out the fire, everything worked appropriately, but the water leaked down from that floor through our lights and onto our stuff, including a portion of our own library collection. And the students had not very long before done the disaster response workshop. And we they were able to come in that morning and process the books in the proper way. And we were able to send some books out to be frozen, and we were able to dry some things out quickly to avoid mold issues. And that's one of the big problems, is that if you don't handle it correctly right away, it becomes a bigger problem. So, but that gave us a chance, a very real world and very personal opportunity to deal with some of the stuff that the students learned.
Jeff, I have a question
Yeah.
for you. If you could give some advice to anyone who is thinking of coming in this direction, it's funny, when we started right here in this space, there was a term you used about the books, and you said it gives you structural satisfaction.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay, we should put this somewhere. If you are interested in structural satisfaction, this could be for you. But what advice do you have for people out in our audience that are thinking of coming to North Bennett Street School to study bookbinding?
Well, so that's a good example of, I guess, the kind of things that appeal to people. And if they do, you might be interested in that. There's a long list of stuff. And I know here the faculty talks about some of those things and the types of people that are interested in the subjects that we teach. And I remember talking with the locksmith instructor about, a lot of people that are really into puzzles often find themselves very attracted to that program. There are a lot of things that might attract you to this. In terms of sort of pursuing this, I often recommend that people do take some hands-on workshops as a starting point. I think one of the big things for a lot of our students is figuring out the difference between having a passion for books, which a lot of us have, and the difference between that and actually working sometimes in a very repetitive way on them all day long, every day. That's very different from having a passion for reading or liking books as objects. And that does not to say that people who can't like both of those things, they often do. But I recommend that people get some hands-on experience and get a taste of what that's like. There are a lot of places out there that teach workshops. The North Bennett workshops are particularly good if you're considering this program, because many of them are taught by graduates. Many of them are structured in a similar way to the way we do things in the full-time program. So there's some benefits to that. But aside from that, it doesn't matter to me if prospective students have taken a workshop here or at the San Francisco Center for the Book or Minnesota Center for Book Arts or any other of a wide range of places. Another thing I would say is I recommend that people do some research on the pathways that we've been talking about. So our graduates many of them go on to work in conservation and institutions, but a large number of them also do what I would consider traditional hand bookbinding. And quite a few of them have their own small businesses and do that work privately for private collectors. And in those cases, they often do a very wide range of things. They might do fancy new deluxe bindings. They might do small editions. They might do repair work. restoration kind of work. They might do a lot of different things. It's one of the benefits of this program is that you do get that foundation in all of those things, and you can choose to specialize, and you will. But depending on the path you take, you might also end up finding yourself doing a wider range of work than you thought you would to begin with. But I recommend doing a little research on education opportunities in the field, because depending on how you want to work in the field of conservation, this might not be the best way. I mean, a master's program might be more appropriate for you because it might lead to a slightly different career path. Most of our graduates, most of our students come here because they want to work at the bench, is how we describe it, as opposed to being in a more administrative kind of role in conservation, where you might not get to actually work on books as much. Our pathway is really geared towards the people who want to do bench work of any variety. So researching what those opportunities are. If you're more interested in book arts in a wide array, you've probably noticed that most of our work that I've shown here is traditional historic styles of bookbinding, and we make a lot of blank books. We're making these as models, as structural models, and it's an economical way. We don't dig into content very much. That set book project that I talked about is sort of one of the more traditional, more creative opportunities for people, in the sense that they get to be a little more artistic, as opposed to a lot of the work we do, which I jokingly say maybe isn't creative, because I'm making, this is copied from a book that I have, like as closely as possible. You may or may not define that as creative. I don't know. And so those are things to look at. So if you're more interested in content and book art structures that are a little more creative and non-traditional structures, this might not be the right program for you. You might be interested in one of the book arts programs. But I think we have a lot to offer and a broad range of things to offer, but we do focus on certain things, as much as we can. We keep the focus on those things, and this is a time period that you can focus on those things. If you're interested in some of those other things, you have a chance to do that as well. So outside of class time and beyond your time here. So
that's great. And Jeff, employment rates are pretty high coming out of this program, and employment opportunities.
They are fairly high. I don't have specific numbers, but yes, we've had good results in our program. We have good employment in the field. We have good results with students that have decided to pursue additional education that is related usually to this. So as I was saying before, some of them either before or after will get a library degree or choose some other additional training, like or degree that supports a career in this. So we have graduates that are either doing further education or employment at virtually 100%. They're doing one or the other.
That's great.
That's a good thing. And jobs are this is not a lucrative field. I would not describe it that way, but there are jobs, and it is our focus is on preparing people for employment and to make a living doing some type of this work. And we've had good success with that.
That's great. Jeff, thank you so much. Appreciate the tour and all the information. I'll be hosting an information session, and I'm just gonna see if I can flip this camera here. And there we are. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, everybody.
Yep. And I'm gonna go back into the bench room here and just say, thanks, everybody. Thanks for being a part of Open House. Enjoy winter break. Happy holidays and Happy New Year. And there you can see our sound and camera crew, May and Lee, who've been helping out all along. We are, we've recorded our live open house all week long with the intent to edit and then deliver to you some high quality content so that you can come back and reference what you've seen this week, so you can catch the things that you may not have been able to. Hey, Brian. Hello. Brian McGrath. He's our Director of Student Life and Career Services. I'm heading to my office right now. I'm going to transition to the information session to share information about admissions, requirements, financial aid, scholarship. So I'm just gonna leave my phone here that I've been carrying around so that we can visit all the programs. And I'm gonna transition to my desktop and I'll share with you some information there. And I also want to say big thank you to our technical crew, the marketing and engagement team, Io, Barbara, Kevin. Thank you so much for all of your help. Thank you, President Sarah Turner, for introducing us most of the week, and Provost Claire Fruitman, who joined us on Wednesday. For my teammate, Sharon Stetson, who's been staffing the chat, for the faculty that staff the chat. This has been really fun and hopefully effective informationally for all of you in the audience. I'm going to sign out and sign back in. I am back. Thank you so much, Barbara. Also, big thank you to all of the North Bennett Street School students and faculty who have joined us all week long to share what their projects are, what their stories are about how they've decided to come here, and for faculty to talk about the curricula here at North Bennett Street School. Thank you so much, and thank you, our audience, for joining us. This is not your only opportunity to learn about North Bennett Street School. We have an amazing website, nbss.edu. It is rich with content and information for you about the full-time programs, about continuing education, public programming, our store and gallery. And again, I want to mention that we are able to have visitors at this time as well. So if you want to come in, look for a gift, you can do that. And as Jeff mentioned earlier, right on our homepage is jobs and commissions. You can take a look there as well. I am going to share my screen and show you my slide deck for the information session here. And then I'm also at a point I will share this with you in the chat. This is a Google slide deck, and you can, when you open that up, you have the ability to save that to your desktop as a reference. The website is amazing. We made this for the information sessions that we usually host most Mondays at noon. We actually have one coming up this Monday at noon where I'll go over this information again, and I hope to answer your questions in the chat towards the end. So let's see here. Okay, so these are all hot linked. My colleague Barbara was kind enough to put this together for us. And you can see here the upcoming start dates Right now, we are taking applications for the spring start. And the programs that are starting on January 31st are cabinet and furniture making, jewelry making and repair, and locksmithing. For all three of those programs, we are still taking applications. If you're interested in training for any one of these industries here at North Bennett Street School, you can go to the website and you can hit the apply button, fill out the form there. Filling out a form starts a physical file for you here, as well as a digital file for all of the other materials that we ask for in requirements. And I will go over those requirements in a little bit, but I just want to give you an overview here. There's also our health and safety standards here, especially around the pandemic. We've always been about safety. With tool use and machine use. This is a number one topic for us here at North Bennett Street School. And when the pandemic came, we have tackled it. The safety team here has done an amazing job keeping people safe in a number of ways. If you're looking for details on that, you can check out our website again. I'll also add, I took my mask off because I'm in my office now, but everyone is masked in the building, and we do have a vaccine policy for incoming students and staff, faculty, and our community. That is, people are required to be vaccinated to come here and study. And you can also apply for either a medical or a religious exemption, and you do that with us. If you become an applicant or you are an applicant, I'm happy to go into details about that process. Okay, so I mentioned that cabinet and furniture making, jewelry making and repair, locksmithing start on January 31st. And then on February 14th, Valentine's Day, we have a start for violin making. Violin making is a 30-month program. It runs 10 months per academic year. And it starts a little bit later than those other three programs. Those four programs start in the spring. And then they also have a fall start of September 6th. So September 6th is the next start date for all of the full-time accredited career training programs here at North Bennett Street School. I will also share with you that February 1st is our priority deadline for people that are applying for the September 6th start. So if you are able to complete all of your requirements by February 1st, our team here and the admissions committee, which is made up of faculty, staff, we're going to be reviewing all of those completed files for all 9 full-time programs between now and all the way through February. And then March 1st is the date where we make our first round of decisions. We are always taking applications all the way up through the summer. So once you get to a place where you are ready, willing, and able to move forward towards applying for career training here, we will take an application any time of the year towards the future. For those that like to plan ahead. So I just want to be very clear, the priority deadline is just what it sounds like. We'll prioritize those completed files the month of February for our March 1st decision date. Okay, so I put financial aid and scholarships, I moved that slide up into the beginning here. Some of the questions over open house and that we get from visitors and phone calls and prospective students all the time are questions about affordability. I will start and say that North Bennett Street School is, not only are we an accredited career training institution, we're accredited by the ACCSC, but we are also a mission-driven nonprofit organization. And what that means is that we are committed to training people with hand skills for careers in the industries and programs that you see here. So there is a tuition fee. Tuition on average is about $25,000 a year. The tuition is a little bit different by program because the hours for training for each program, whether they're a 9-month program, an 18-month, or 30-month, the hours are a little bit different and the needs are a little bit different. But on average, it's about $25,000 US to come here. There's also tools where if you visit our website and you pick the program that you're interested in, there is a menu on that page that shows you the tuition, the estimate for tools. Sometimes there's material costs that would be for the carpentry program, cabinet and furniture making. And then to circle back, as an accredited institution, we are considered an undergraduate institution by FAFSA. So if you're going to apply for financial aid through FAFSA, check off the box that says undergraduate. Probably take you about 30 to 40 minutes to fill out that FAFSA. It takes 3 business days for the results to come to North Bennett Street School, and we collect all of those. You use our school code, which is up here, 015527. And we, over the past number of years, we have built up North Bennett Street School scholarship pretty significantly. This is why I wanted to start in talking about financial aid and scholarship. We're all about access and affordability in order to support your training here and to support the mission of North Bennett Street School. So I would encourage you, if you're thinking of moving in this direction and cost is a factor, like it is for many people, the concept of investing, please don't let that hinder you from moving forward. Go ahead and apply for financial aid through FAFSA. We're automatically going to consider you for North Bennett Street School scholarship. Average awards have been about 1/3 of tuition that support from North Bennett Street School scholarship. There are third-party scholarships as well that you can look into. There is vocational rehabilitation from depending on what state you're from. And there's also veterans benefits as well. The full range of veterans benefits, whether that's Montgomery, GI Bill, post 9/11, or vocational rehabilitation and employment. All of those can be used here at North Bennett Street School. Another very important tool that we have available is the net price calculator. The net price calculator, it's mandatory for every post-secondary school and college to have. We have one that will take you about 10 minutes to fill out. It is on our financial aid page, and I would encourage you to take a look there. Punch in what your numbers are, and it will give you a ballpark of what you might expect. We do make financial aid awards once we make decisions. So if we're able to qualify you for acceptance, and we can offer you acceptance, we will, within 24 to 48 hours, we're usually able to get a financial aid award out to you that's official, so that you can get a look there. But the net price calculator is a great tool for you to get an idea of what kind of support you can get through FAFSA and also from North Bennett Street School Scholarship. North Bennett Street School Scholarship is mostly need-based. We have an umbrella of scholarship, but then we have some specific scholarships as well. One is the Workforce Scholarship, which is available for residents of the city of Boston and graduates of Boston Public Schools. So if you're either a resident of the city of Boston or a graduate of Boston Public Schools, I would encourage you to complete the FAFSA so that we can identify you and then consider you for this need-based scholarship. This is a way for us, we're an institution that is both local, our history is local, but we're also an international institution as well. People come here from all over the country and all over the world to train in our programs and to take continuing education courses with us. Our Workforce Scholarship is a great tool for us to be able to support local students and train them here. And then because I mentioned international, the other thing I'm excited to share with you is that this year we are able to support international students with North Bennett Street School scholarship funding. The net price calculator for international students was just launched with Open House. And so if you're an international student or you know someone who is and is interested, you can visit our financial aid page and you can use that tool so that we can make an assessment to see if we're able to support your training here as well. All right, I mentioned deadlines a little bit earlier here. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing and I'll come back here and back in the chat. Thank you for sharing the international student net price calculator. And then I'm going to share the document that the slide deck that I started with here. I'll also open it up to anyone who's in the audience. If you have any questions, you're welcome to type them in the chat. I'm just going to guess that this is going so swimmingly and thorough that there are not any questions. Yeah, so thanks for your question, Alexis. We can absolutely have more in-depth conversations about employment landscape, post-program. And if you want to share with me the program that you're interested in, I would say every industry that we train for has specific pathways and information. If you want to just type in the chat what that program or industry is, I'm happy to talk a little bit now. And then for everyone, this is a good way for us to talk about the programs here, admissions, financial aid in general. But my team, we're used to talking to everybody individually as well, especially applicants. So I'm happy to schedule a phone call, a Zoom, or a visit to North Bennett Street School. Conveniently, we're going out on winter break. And will return on January 3rd. So what we're expecting here is to schedule January with these phone calls, Zoom meetings, visits to the school. You can send us an email to admissions@nbss.edu, and I'm happy to schedule you. I will be checking my emails a little bit over the break. So bookbinding and piano tuning. So we were just in bookbinding talking with Jeff, and we kind of wrapped up with talking about employment. Employment opportunities for bookbinding are usually within a university library, a private library, or a public library that is large enough to have a conservation department. So that's a lot of the work happens in conservation. There's also fine binding. Those are your two main pathways. Conservation being the much larger employment field. And then many people will work in both. And I'll use Martha Kearsley, our faculty member and graduate who Jeff referenced earlier. She in the past has worked, I believe, at a library for Harvard doing conservation. And then she also runs her own business, Strong Arm Bindery, as well. So a lot of people will balance those two to both make a living and to fulfill their lifestyle choices as well as far as interests. Okay, so bookbinding. And then I'll also say every one of the programs here is connected to a network. A lot of those networks do include alumni, but many of the employment network participants just have an awareness of what it is we train for and the quality of work that our students and graduates do. So they will contact faculty directly over the course of the year with specific jobs or requirements they're looking for. And then they will also contact Brian McGrath, who we passed in the hallway, our Director of Student Life and Career Services. They'll contact him directly and through our homepage for jobs and commissions. And students and alumni have the opportunity to access the feed of jobs and commissions. They'll look for things there. I will add that this is a lifetime resource. So once you become a student and a graduate of North Bennett Street School, you have lifetime access to Student Life and Career Services, not only to see the job and commission board, but for the resources in that department as well. Piano technology, again, because it is in some sense a micro industry, our faculty are very well connected with piano technicians globally and nationally. So wherever those opportunities are, if there's a need for a technician, if they're aware that someone might be retiring, a lot of times that information funnels to the program and to students that are graduating or alumni. And we're always trying to do our best to connect our graduates and our students tracking towards graduation with what's best for their interests, their skills, and their geographic choice when that's possible. I hope that's helpful. And then the other thing that I'll say, Alexis, to your question is, if you're able to visit us when we go on a tour of the program, you'd most likely have an opportunity to ask this question directly of faculty, and I'm sure they'll have a richer or at least a different answer than the one that I've given here today. All right, how much high school level math is required to be successful with carpentry and furniture making? Thanks for this question, Jody. we use a lot of math here at North Bennett Street School. And I want to make the distinction that the math here, while there is absolutely calculation, it is quite a living math. That when you're making plans to build anything, or when you're building something, there is that tangible three-dimensional aspect that is right there with you. And so I think that it is extremely helpful to have a background in math and to have an excellent working knowledge of math. And at the same time, if you are someone that does not test well in math, I don't think we're necessarily giving math tests here. I think the type of math that's applied here is about sort of learning to measure, learning to cut in carpentry, learning angles, and then making those cuts. So if you're someone who has hand skills and can apply living math and just happens to not be a good test taker, you ought to be okay here. And the other thing that I will share is for carpentry and preservation carpentry, we have a skill test. We used to have a paper math test and we moved away from that because of what I just mentioned, that you're not going to show up on a job site and have someone give you a math quiz. But what we do here for the skill test is we'll introduce you to a combination square. If you're familiar with this, that's great. If you're not, we're happy to teach you about this tool and how it works. And then we have essentially a 12-inch 2x4. And what we'll do is we'll ask you to measure and scribe lines on this. And I'll just share for everybody here, if you can see this, there's a line that runs half of here and then goes around the board. This is the skill test for carpentry and preservation carpentry. The math that you'll be using is here and here. You find the halfway mark, you make some marks and then scribe a line here. And there's a few different exercises along those lines. You cannot get away from puns here. And then what we want to do is we want to see, can you follow instructions? Can you execute? Are you comfortable with tools and materials? These are the kinds of things that are going to be happening in the program and in the industry. When someone asks you to make something while you're on a construction crew, it would be closer to what this exercise is than a written test. So I hope that is helpful to everyone here. Okay, let me see. I'm reading the chat. Yeah, okay, so I would say the research about being able to work at libraries and museums without an advanced degree that your friends are sharing with you, that may be true. I would urge you to contact those libraries and ask them directly. There's if you think of your career pathway and whatever training and education you need to get to what your goal is, if you start at the end, if you go right to human resources at the Library of Congress and say, I want to work in this section of the Library of Congress, and my plan is to take this educational pathway. I want to go to North Bennett Street School to the bookbinding program. Is this the pathway to get there? I feel like you would get some good answers there if you could make contact. And that's, I'm using some specifics, but the application is universal. any human resources department or institution, if you can get in touch with people either through your network or directly, that should be helpful. All right. And then let me see, requirements for jewelry making is a portfolio. My question is, what sort of portfolio can someone who's coming into jewelry making submit? Okay, Alfred, thank you for this. So when we ask for a portfolio in jewelry making, in cabinet and furniture making, and in bookbinding, we're hoping to see the medium be a match, right? So conservation or book arts for bookbinding, working with precious metals or stone setting for the bench jeweler program, and fine woodworking for cabinet and furniture making. At the same time, we are very used to identifying transferable skills for people, both as we look at a resume, as we interview people and learn about you as a candidate, and with the portfolio. The portfolio is a great way for us to see what are your hand skills, what's your mechanical aptitude, what is your attention to detail. So if you have some stone setting or work with precious metals, making rings or anything like that, that's fantastic. If you do not, what is the other medium that you work in that you can show attention to detail and hand skills? It could be fine art, it could be knitting, it could be sculpture. There's a range of mediums where you could show those things. And then jewelry making is also another one of the programs that has a bench test. In that bench test, we'll ask you to put a saw together and then scribe a line on a piece of copper, a copper sheet, and then hand saw that line. So the admissions requirements are a little bit different for each one of these programs, and they're all created as a way for you to reveal what your candidacy is, what your aptitude and what your potential is to come in this direction. So it's not just that one thing. There's a number of things we ask for because we're trying to get an idea holistically what, you know, who you present as a candidate. So so maybe you may not have a lot of work in jewelry making per se, so you could show, you know, knitting and fine art or leather work or something like that in your portfolio. And then when we ask you to come here to meet with faculty and to take that skill test, the skill test will also show another piece of what your ability and potential is. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Let me see, Aiden. That's great. Yes, so will you receive confirmation once you're completed? So thanks for this question, Aiden. We don't have an automated way or a system right now that gives you a transactional piece that says, now your file is completed. We have a relatively small team here working on the files. My colleague Sharon Stetson manages all of the admissions files. And when we get back from our winter break, we will be going through all of the files. And what I mean is you don't get an automatic email once your last piece comes in. But over the course of January up to February 1st, we will be reaching out to all of the applicants to say, hey, would you please send your resume and your second letter of recommendation? We have one from Vladimir Penkrat. We're looking for what your second one is. And then, and I don't know if anyone's got a recommendation from Vladimir. So we will be reaching out to all of our applicants to let you know that it's complete in the month of January, or if we need anything to get completed so that we can go into that month of February to review everyone who's interested in September. I'll add to that, Aiden, because we have the spring start for the 4 programs on both January 31st and February 14th, that a lot of our attention right now is towards those 4 starts. And I apologize up front. Each one of you, your candidacy, your interest is absolutely important to us. And we just want to make sure that we can focus our energies on the spring start, and then we'll turn all of our attention to the fall. Oh, and Sharon says that your application is complete. Look at that. Anyone else want to know? Okay, do you need to have any experience to apply to the advanced piano course? Ellen, thank you for this question. This is, I would say that the majority of people that think about applying or that will apply to advanced piano will come to the understanding that getting an education in our basic piano technology program is important. There's a few people, when we visited piano technology, we heard from Debbie Sear, who is the head of piano technology. She's also a graduate of advanced piano, and she did not go to basic piano technology. She came here, she took a battery of tuning tests, and then tested in because she was already a practicing technician. So if you're a practicing piano technician, if you are certified as a registered piano technician, you have what's called your RPT. The group of people that's in that category of experience usually are good candidates, external candidates for advanced piano technology. We're happy to work with you and with faculty to decide which is the right path for you. Okay, let's see. Thank you, Sharon, for chiming in here on the chat. And then John has a question about the spring starts versus the fall. I'll just go over that again. Our spring starts are cabinet and furniture making, jewelry making and repair, locksmithing, and violin making and repair. The first 3, locksmithing, jewelry, cabinet, and furniture, will be starting on January 31st. We are taking applications now for those starts. We have rosters in each one of those classes, but we have spots available in those as well. Violin making starts February 1st. It's one of our smallest programs. We have a small start this year, and right now we have a start as well as a small wait list. But don't let wait lists or anything like that stop you from moving forward. We never know how things are going to unfold, who's going to win the lottery, who's going to get an offer to travel the world in a balloon, or when they go to quit their job. You know, some people will be asked to stay, and then they'll contact us and say, hey, for this reason or that, I may be unable to start. And so we will look for recent completed applicants and people on our wait list to make that offer to you. So if this is something that you're interested in doing, we urge you to boldly move forward and go through the admissions process. Okay, great. Thanks for the thanks there. I'm just scrolling through to look for some other things, questions here. Right, so I think there's a question from Jody about continuing education. We've referenced a few times, continuing education is a fantastic way for you to get some experience, to understand if you want to make the commitment to full-time programs. We have been on hiatus, unfortunately, because of the pandemic, and there's been a pent up demand to join those courses. I'm guessing that in continuing education, they may also be utilizing wait lists. So ask to get on a wait list if that's the case. And then I know that the continuing ed department is working as hard as they can to be able to serve all of the people that are interested in taking those courses. If you are an applicant to the full-time programs and you are interested in taking a continuing education course before you get started for any reason at all, please let us know as an applicant that that's something that you're interested in doing. We are friends in continuing education. We work very closely with and we try and track our applicants as best as we can towards those experiences before, during, and after full-time training. And I can see that Barbara and Io are also on the chat answering this as well. All right, got about 15 minutes left here. And I did take a turn into just answering everyone's questions here. I'm happy to continue doing that. And then I'll also reference that in the chat. I think I put the link in, and then I think that Barbara and Io also put a link in as well. Please open this slide deck up if you have any interest and save it to your desktop. It is a great quick reference to our very rich website for admissions requirements, financial aid, and the programs. Does the school have a cafeteria or do the students brown bag it? It is a combination of, I'd say, brown bagging or going out. The north end is essentially your cafeteria. And a lot of people do bring lunches. I would say most of the programs will also have like a community refrigerator that you can store something in, or people will bring a personal cooler. It is wise to make and bring your own lunch for all the obvious reasons. And I will also take this time to mention that usually every Wednesday, the school provides lunch for all the students. And I like this story. A former colleague, Lana Jackson, during one of the winters where we had like, I don't know, we just got dumped on with snow and it was very difficult to go outside. So Lana had the great idea to start what became Peanut Butter and Jelly Day, where we would set up tables, we would have tea and hot chocolate and a whole range of sandwiches that people could make. We realized pretty quickly that it's also a great community builder here. North Bennett Street School is a true learning community, and people like to work hard here. So you could be here for the entire time and there's people that would stay at their benches to do that work. And we do believe in rest, and we do believe in creating opportunities for people to meet each other as well. And that's what that PB&J Day turned into. Now it has evolved, and I think we have some relationships with some of our community partners who are providing those lunches for students, and that's happening on Wednesday. Hello, London. Okay, let me see. This question on piano technology, open house, the business course. Okay, so this is a good question, John, about the business course. So we have an opt-in business course every spring that runs about 6 weeks. It's usually half a day on Fridays, and we'll have specialists come in. The first one might talk about business plans. Another one might be contracts, or one might be about marketing. So for 6 weeks, there'll be a general business course for everyone that people can opt in. At the same time, some of the programs, including piano technology runs their own in-house business course as part of their curriculum. And then in addition to that, I would say back to this concept of learning communities here, each program, whether it's a faculty conversation that is specifically part of the curriculum, or it's day-to-day conversation with faculty and your student peers, people are constantly talking about the industry, the business, choices that people are making, tracking towards employment post-graduation. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, another one from Alfred here. The requirements for international students is to prove that you've graduated from an English-based school, aside from the transcript. Yeah, so good question, Alfred. If you've gone to an English-based school, you can send us your transcript. We ask international students or require international students, and you can see this on our website, to get your official transcript certified. So there's certification companies. One of them is WES, WES.org. There's a few other ones where you'll have your transcript sent to them, and they'll certify the transcript and send the certified copy to us to verify that you've at least graduated a high school level. I know that's not your question, but I wanted to start there around international students. As far as the ability to speak and understand English, which is what all of our courses are taught in, you can provide a transcript from being at a school that is taught in English, or you can provide a certificate from taking a course, from a private. There's a lot of language schools around here. Some people will come here and take those. Some will do them in their home country. And you can send us a certificate of completion from that as well. There's a question from Jody about housing. We ask all of our students to find their own housing. We do not have school housing or dormitories. We're located right in the North End, in the middle of Boston. And I can say with confidence, in my decade working at North Bennett Street School, I've heard a number of reasons that people were unable to come, including that they did not wear a wrist guard while they were rollerblading. So good advice for everybody, please wear your wrist guards. But no one has said that they cannot come because they were unable to find housing. We are acutely aware that we live in the city of Boston, which I think is probably number 4 out of cities in the United States for being expensive. But as I mentioned earlier, we are providing institutional scholarship that can assist you there. It starts with tuition, but any relief there can help to free up some funding on your side for housing. And then I think the other copper lining on this is that our programs are 9, 18, and 30 months. So as far as housing, like the research in the industry and for employment, I would encourage you to start doing research on the rental market in and around Boston as it pertains to you. And then I'll also say that Brian McGrath, our Director of Student Life and Career Services, he does keep tabs on students that are transitioning to graduation. If there's a roommate situation or something like that, he'll usually be in touch with incoming enrolled students for those opportunities. And so there's a chance there as well. Let me see. The name of the transcript certification agency. That is on our website. CED is one, the Center for Educational whatever the D stands for. They're a company that's in Boston, and then WES, WES.org. They're not the only ones. They're just the most common ones that we see people use. It's probably about $100 to get that certification. And then, like I said, they'll send us the copy. Okay, Alexis, the thoughts on any possibilities that I'm going to go back on lockdown because of Omicron. It is a crystal ball question, and I say a lot that I wish I had a crystal ball. What I can say is that we are training right now in person. We have been doing that. This is the 2nd September that we've started and trained. We are taking an abundance of caution in how we operate. And I'm relatively certain that we've had no known transmissions on campus. And I think that our safety committee, which includes internal and external experts, has done an amazing job at keeping our community, our institutions safe. And I know that they are keeping an eye on what is happening right now. And because we were able to navigate the first wave of the pandemic, which was new to everyone and universal, so well, that I imagine we will take the same approach if there is anything to be done. For the moment, we are recruiting for the starts, the February, January, and the September start, as we have been for the last 2 admission cycles. And if there are any changes at all, it will be on that link on our website. And certainly we will message our entire community if there are any major changes. So I hope that that's helpful for you. Good question. Okay. And let me see, it is Martin, a link to catch up on a couple of things. Yeah, I'm just going to put the link back in to the slide deck that I'm using here for everyone. And I'll also add that, our website, there is an FAQ section for admissions and financial aid. We also just completed a few videos to help to complement those frequently asked questions. Let me see. No, that's great. I appreciate that, Alexis. Okay, we got 2 minutes left. Any other questions? Is it possible to get an example of a portfolio submission from the cabinet and furniture making program? I don't have one at hand, but I would say, a lot of times people, if you make something that has dovetails, a candle box, something like that, something in the realm of fine woodworking is fantastic for us. Again, we look for transferable skills, and we do look for people that have the potential and transferable skills. So it doesn't have to be that. But what's good about already being in the medium is we'll talk about the concept of you as the applicant or the candidate self-qualifying. And part of self-qualification is that you have an understanding of what the commitment is like and what the work is like. And so if you're someone who has, cut a few dovetails or done any kind of fine woodworking, you'll have that experience to know that you love it enough to want to continue and grow. And if you don't have a direct match in the medium, some of these things, working with precious metals, you're at a bench for 6 hours plus a day doing minutia work that takes a lot of patience. And the decision to move towards training in any one of these industries is a big one. So we just want to make sure that we work with you as a team together, so that you have an understanding of what that commitment is like, what the work is like. So I hope that answers the question about the portfolio. Yeah, and it's a range of things. Going back to Alexis, of wanting to see examples of people. All I have is like finished examples from students that are in the program. But sometimes that happens as well. Sometimes people are very advanced woodworkers that want to come here and in some sense treat being here like a master class, and other times not so much. Even if you're working on a project like you built a doghouse or something, we're still looking for that attention to detail and quality. So those are the things that we look for, even if the medium is not a direct match. So I think I've answered all the questions that are here. I'm glad that you were able to join us today. I will be hosting another info session this coming Monday at noon, and into the foreseeable future as well. It isn't the only way to engage myself or my team here in admissions and financial aid. If you have any questions, you want to schedule a one-on-one phone call, a Zoom meeting, or a visit to the school as an applicant, you're welcome to write admissions@nbss.edu, or you can call the school as well. And we'll be scheduling the entire month of January for those calls and visits for everyone that's with us who is applying for either the spring or for the September 6th start for all programs. All right, I want to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today and for joining us all week. We are grateful that you joined us, and we look forward to hearing from you again. I see that there's a couple of other things in the chat. I just want to make sure I don't miss another question. It looks like we're good. Happy holidays to everyone. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you again, and we look forward to speaking with you and hopefully meeting you in person in the new year. Take care, everyone.